And Jesus, a Jew, went up to Jerusalem. When he went into Jerusalem for the Passover, in the temple he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons. And the money changers were sitting there. And we are told in verse 15, and making a whip of cords, he drove all of them, the oxen, the sheep, the goats, and the money changers. He drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and oxen. He poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of trade. His disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house will consume me. This is written in Psalms 69:9, where I will read, for zeal for your house has consumed me, and the reproaches of those who reproach you have fallen on me. So they remember, they know the scriptures. They have been looking for Jesus. We were told that in chapter 1. They had been looking for the Messiah, for the return, for the beginning, the first time. They didn't know there was a second time. Looking for the Messiah to come. Do you remember when, I have to go back to the first one. The next day, John was standing with his disciples, and this is from 1. And in 39, Jesus said, come and you will see. So Jesus invited them. But you notice here in 38, when he says to his disciples, what are you seeking? What are you seeking? And they said, Rabbi, teacher, where are you staying? Then we see right here in 41, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, he first found his own brother Simon and said to him, we have found the Messiah. And he brought him to Christ. You see, his disciples believed him because they were looking for him. They weren't looking for miracles, they were looking for Jesus. In verse 18, the Jews said to him, what sign do you show us for doing these things? Now these Pharisees, they knew the psalm. Here's Jesus going in and his zeal for the church, throwing out the money changers, throwing out the sheeps and the goats and the lambs and the sacrifices that were being sold for extra money so that the Jewish leaders could gain from the worship of God. So the Jews said to him, what sign do you show us for doing these things? And Jesus answered them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. The Jews then said, it has taken 46 years to build this temple. They were thinking of the temple that Jesus had just cleansed. And will you raise it up in 3 days? But Jesus was speaking about the temple of his body. When therefore he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this. And they believed the scriptures and the word that Jesus had spoken. Verse 23. Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name, when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus, on his part, did not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people, and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man. So here we see temple visit, scripture fulfilled. temple revelation, we see Jesus telling us that the temple that counts is not the one made by hands, but the body, which is the temple of God. And he says, you destroy this temple, which they will, and he will raise it up 3 days. I want you to notice the difference between these two groups. We have those that are at the wedding. Those were the ones, the disciples, who sought Jesus. They knew the scriptures. They were looking for Jesus. And when they found the Messiah, they were glad and followed the Messiah. But here, these people, these Pharisees, Sadducees, worshipers in the temple, they were looking for a sign. What can God provide for me? They weren't looking. They didn't know Christ was going to come now. But because many believed in his name, because they saw the signs that he was doing, they never followed that path of seeking the truth. And Jesus says that in 24. Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them. He knew their minds. He knew they only wanted to be around Jesus. They knew he only wanted to be in the church. Jesus knew that their goal was for their own pleasure, for their own fulfillment. Do a sign. What can you give me? That's what Jesus said. Jesus did not entrust himself to them because he knew their people. He knew the hearts of them. And he didn't need anybody to bear witness about them. He knew it from their actions. He knew it because they weren't seeking the truth. They weren't following Jesus. They were looking for signs, miracles, prophecies. We have many people today that do just that. And we have many people whose itchy ears want to hear prophet after prophet exclaim what God's going to do for them. But Jesus knew what was in a man. John 1 and 2. John reveals to us, the Spirit reveals to us two types. Those who seek God and seek the truth, and those that seek a sign for their own pleasure. May we be the first kind and not the second.